The Arab National Congress held its first conference in Egypt's capital, Cairo, in years. The conference discussed the interference of foreign powers in national affairs, particularly in Arab countries that witnessed the popular uprising during the past 2 years. Adel Mahroui tells us more.
With no doubt, the Egyptian January Revolution made all security forces concerned with national affairs, which to an extent dropped the guard to national security threats for a while. When stability began to surf, some foreigners and foreign NGOs were chased by the authorities, accused with espionage and threatening national security. This was not the case in Egypt alone. All other Arab countries went through this turmoil, also suffered. For this reason, the Arab National Congress held its 24th session to discuss the threats of foreign intervention in the region.
Since its beginning, the Arab National Congress continued without any foreign financial support, even from an Arab nation. And at this time where billions of dollars now flow, the Arab nation is torn apart. These amounts are only searching for political streams who seek instability and destruction to our nation.
Most of the participants are from the left wings. In each conference they commemorate the Arab world's last socialist leader, the Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Leading politicians from the Arab world joined the conference to share their country's experience in the discussions.
What has been described as the Arab Spring cannot earn such a title because of the amount of destruction and bloodshed that happened in Syria. Yemen, Egypt and all other countries can't be described as a spring. A great opportunity for international agenda existed, although this was not part of the revolution.
The problem is not with the revolutions, but foreign powers, particularly the United States and some Western countries. They try to make sure the revolutions will turn into their own benefits. Their influence still persists, and now all civil powers must stand together against that threat.
The concept of the Congress began in 1913 with the first Arab Congress held in Paris. But with the rise of national movements in the region, the concept developed to the Arab National Congress in Tunisia in 1990. It aims to create popular awareness about the importance of Arab unity. All participants agreed on one of the main reasons for foreign influence on national affairs to continue. It is the division among the political lines in each of these Arab countries. And they warned, the longer the division continues, the graver the consequences. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Japan says it will give $1 billion in aid to stabilize the Islamist-infested Sahel region of Africa, months after the deaths of 10 Japanese in a hostage crisis there. The money is part of a $14 billion aid package to be given to Africa over 5 years, which Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced at the start of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. CCTV's Maria Galang has more.
The $1 billion aid package is aimed at bringing peace and stability to the Islamist-infested Sahel region of Africa. The money is part of a $14 billion aid package to be given to Africa over 5 years, which Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced on Saturday at the start of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. This follows the deaths of 10 Japanese citizens who were held in a hostage crisis at a gas plant in Algeria. The 4-day crisis ended with bodies and blood when Algerian commandos stormed the plant. Graphic images and accounts that emerged in the days after the assault invoked executions and sent a collective shudder through Japan, whose energy and infrastructure firms are active in the region.
In January of this year, a hostage incident took place in Algeria, imparting a tremendous shock to the Japanese people. Throughout this incident, Japan came to solemnly realize once again that stability in the Sahel region, which connects North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, is indispensable to the prosperity of Northern and Western Africa.
Despite the Japanese public's wariness of unrest in far-off and little-known places, government, industry and academic leaders warned the resource-poor archipelago cannot withdraw its energy interests from areas like the Sahel. Instead, Tokyo must take a lead in helping to create stability through social programs and development that can divert and tackle unemployment and poverty that experts say leads to extremism.
Le Japon, où nous nous trouvons aujourd'hui, symbolise.
Japan, where we are today, symbolizes the victory of nations over nature and temperaments, the victory of nations for peace, security and development.
Pour la paix et la sécurité ainsi que le développement.
Japan will also support the training of 2,000 people in counter-terrorism and security maintenance activities. But as well as muscle, he said, there had to be an effort to improve governance, boost schemes to counter food shortages and provide work for the unemployed. Maria Galang, CCTV.
While relations between Japan and Africa began at the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in 1993, Japan made commitments to increase the share and volume of its aid to Africa. Since then, Tokyo has supported a wide range of activities to enhance peace, good governance, sustainable development and security in Africa. However, Japanese relations with Africa seem to be on the rocks recently. CCTV's Carol Oyola takes a look at relations between Japan and Africa and how African countries can drive its relationship with other countries.
The TICAD framework has been shaped by Tokyo. All summits are held in Japan despite the African Union Commission being a co-organizer. Many analysts argue that Japan uses TICAD as a political tool, with Japan's constant bidding for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Achieving this goal requires the support of African countries. But competition from China and other emerging donors has led Japan to commit to TICAD in Africa. There are about 800 Chinese companies operating in Africa, a far cry from Japan's 227. Japan has used conference diplomacy to solidify their relationships with Africa. Despite Japan's current financial crisis, it committed itself to deliver development aid in Africa. Japanese media reported that Japan's sudden moves are intended to compete with China and other developing countries in their influence in Africa. Africa is now regarded as an attractive investment and trade destination. The continent is home to 10 of the fastest growing economies. Analysts argue that it is therefore important for Africa to take ownership of the situation. They say African countries must find ways to reduce their financial dependence on external donors and also undertake public sector reform, implement programs to effectively tackle corruption, and develop strong legal frameworks. Carol Oyola, CCTV.
The new government of the Central African Republic has issued an international arrest warrant against deposed former President Francois Bozize, accusing him of crimes against humanity and incitement to genocide, according to the state prosecutor. Now, thousands of fighters from the Seleka rebel coalition, angered by what they said was Bozize's refusal to honor an earlier peace deal, marched into the capital Bangui on March the 24th, forcing him to flee to neighboring Cameroon. The mineral-rich nation's new leaders opened an investigation last month into alleged crimes committed during his 10-year reign. Prosecutor Alain Tolmo told journalists in Bangui that the crimes uncovered by the investigation fall under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. However, he did not say if the government planned to ask that Bozize be tried before the Hague Court. Bozize is also being sought for alleged economic crimes. And we still have more news, views and analysis for you here on Africa Live, including Somalia's headache. We ask how the new administration will deal with emerging federal states. And a court orders Zimbabwe poll to be held at the end of July. We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need to trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world. Watching Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Somalia is taking small steps towards recovery after decades of civil war. However, analysts say breakaway regions, rival clans and competing interests of neighboring nations are threatening its fragile process. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has reiterated that Somalia has one federal government. The worst flashpoint is the far southern region dubbed Jubaland, bordering Kenya and Ethiopia. Now, both nations have troops there after an invasion in 2011. Now, while this month several rival warlords declared themselves president, sparking anger in Mogadishu, the effective self-appointment of Ahmed Madobe risks opening a rift between Nairobi and Mogadishu. Jubaland, which includes the key port of Kismayu, has a lucrative charcoal industry, fertile farmland, as well as offshore oil and gas deposits. Well, let's hear more on this situation. We are joined by Abdi Ainte, the Executive Director of the Heritage Institute of Policy Studies in Mogadishu. He's joining us live. Mr. Abdi, thank you very much. Is it correct to say, though, that the breakaway regions are a threat to Somalia's newfound stability?
I mean, I don't think I would call them breakaway regions. Not all of them are breakaways except Somaliland. But in the case of, for example, Jubaland and Kismayo, I think states like that do definitely form some kind of a challenge to the central government. But I don't think it's an instability issue. In the longer term, it could be an instability issue. But in the interim, it is a political schisms between the center and the periphery, if you will. And that has been going on for some time. But now that more territory is being recovered from Al-Shabaab, I think we're going to see more and more of this.
All right, Abdi, why are these semi-autonomous states, though, insisting on forming their individual governments?
Well, I mean, I think the grievances are mostly emanating from the previous dictatorship in Somalia before 1991. We had an overly centralized state in Somalia that concentrated power virtually in Mogadishu. And so many communities outside of Mogadishu felt that they had no say in what's going on in the capital. So now I think what we're seeing is, a grievance that is emanating from that kind of a feeling and an effort by these communities to create autonomous regions. Now the problem is that the central government in Mogadishu also fears that some of these regions are eventually going to be kind of run away, not break away, but run away, essentially running their affairs as they do without any role for the federal government. We have an example of that in Puntland right now in northeast Somalia.
Looking at the situation, though, Abdi, of a region like Jubaland, is it likely that this situation may be a stumbling block to relations with neighboring governments? We're talking here about Kenya and Ethiopia.
Well, certainly relations between Kenya and the Somali government here in Mogadishu has been strained over the last few weeks on the issue or over the issue of Jubaland and Kismayo. The fact is that Kenya has been trying to create a buffer zone to protect its vital interests. The Lamu project, a $23 billion project that Kenya is now involved with Ethiopia as well as with South Sudan. Of course, the tourist industry. Kenya has been trying to protect this and create a buffer zone, sort of a strategic space in its border with Somalia. And that has not been sitting well with the federal government in Mogadishu, which felt that Kenya is encroaching upon its sovereignty by essentially creating client states within its own territories. And with respect to Ethiopia, it's less of a big problem at the moment. But I think we can expect in the next few weeks also Ethiopia playing a much more prominent role. The difference between Ethiopia and Kenya when it comes to Somalia is that Ethiopia is very much has a long and treacherous experience in Somalia. Kenya is sort of a newcomer, if you will, and that's why we're seeing now strained relationships between Nairobi and Mogadishu. All
right, Abdi Ainte joining us there from Mogadishu. Thank you for your insights on that situation. Meanwhile, the United Nations agencies and their partners are carrying out an intensive vaccination campaign after polio cases were reported in the world's largest refugee camp, Dadaab complex in northeastern Kenya. Around 288,000 children aged between 1 to 15 years are being targeted in the campaign, according to a news release issued by the World Health Organization and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, since the first case was discovered on May the 17th. Now, laboratory tests have confirmed that 4 more people have the polio, a highly infectious disease caused by a virus that invades the nervous system and can cause total paralysis in a matter of hours. The polio incidents in Dadaab come after a case was reported in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. The Somali government has expressed concern about the situation in south-central Somalia, where immunization activities have not taken place for the last 3 years because of the insecurity situation. Zimbabwe Supreme Court has ordered elections in the country to be held by July the 31st. The ruling brings a resolution to the issue of poll dates, which had divided the coalition government. President Robert Mugabe had wanted elections on June the 29th, while Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai favored a date in September. CCTV's Farai Mwakutuya has more details.
The applicant claimed the country could not be run without the existence of parliament, whose mandate expires on June 29th. The decision is believed to favor President Mugabe, who wanted early polls. However, Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai's party has accepted the ruling, but insists reforms to ensure a free and fair election should be made. Those who had proposed a later date argued the recently passed constitution needs to be implemented first. However, legal experts say this cannot stand in the way of elections.
What was before the Supreme Court was simply that there must be an election. And those arguments were actually raised in the Supreme Court. Those we were arguing that there is need for 4 months. All that has already been taken into account. So what is important is to go by the judgment.
Experts say once a new government has been elected, it will have the responsibility of implementing the country's new charter. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.